I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to a very special Cookies Emergency Pod. We are still the world's most influential basketball podcast, perhaps now more than ever. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, and Andrew Kuo is psyched up yet again. Andrew, tell him why you're mad.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's a Daryl Morey.
I'm sorry, I thought this was a Morey emergency pod.
Oh.
About the Knicks draft pick that they acquired during the mid-season trade for one of the Morey that we will never identify.
Emergency pod. We're going to identify which Morey is which. We still don't know. There's no idea.
You know,
Clues.
After an in-depth investigation, we've come to the conclusion that you cannot tell the difference between the Moreys. You can, however, tell the difference between a meat shield and a Daryl Morey. Who is this guy that I keep hearing about?
What is this thing?
I got a flurry of text messages about some guy who's been hired by the Sixers or is in advanced talks to be hired. What's that about?
Fucking congratulations, man. Motherfucker. Daryl Morey to the Philadelphia 76ers, man.
Let me say this to all you Apollo Global Management haters out there. My faith never wavered. While you ranted and raved about Elton Brand and his cannolis and strombolis and potato pancakes, I held sway with full faith that Josh Harris and the lads at Apollo Global would do the right thing. And here they are. A lot of you haters are eating crow. Josh Harris' Stan account has logged on.
You're no meat shield for Josh Harris. You're the
Hell,
middle.
yes, I am.
Okay, yes, right. But which delicious Italian sliced meat are you?
Oh, I'm a shroud of sopressata right now.
Can you tell me, I know I could Google this, but is it like, you know when people say spaghetti or spaghetti, they leave out of the vowel? So it's like prosciutto. Why do they say prosciutto instead of prosciutto?
I mean, it's just something that the lads over at the Delicatessen and me came up with to save time.
That extra syllable, baby.
Like you wasting your time saying mozzarella during that window of seconds.
Mozzarella.
Yeah, that same time I could be getting some gabagool.
Wow, Soprano season is in effect, man.
I'm sorry, if we lost the chain, I was talking about how much I believed in Apollo Global Management and that they would do the right thing. And it appears that they are on the verge of doing so, which I always presumed they would.
Always. You're just a Josh Harris stan, man.
Dude. Harris, Blitzer. I mean, the lads.
The large lads. The carb-on-carb boys.
So, before I make the haters of Apollo Global Management eat crow even more, why don't you tell me what you, as a Knicks fan, feel about this move? Then we'll get into the weeds a little bit with the Morey.
Just like, I'm just oozing jealousy, man. I'm like seething over here. You know, like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's got like his underbite. I'm mad, man, because it was out there for a lot of teams to pluck Morey from the beautiful delicatessen display and slice him up and lay him upon your franchise like a beautiful prosciutto spread. And the Sixers did it and the Knicks didn't, and it was out there for both of them, as we discussed on Cookies for months, a month maybe. But I am jealous and I'm happy because I love Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and Philly and you, and I am happy for you guys, man. This is cool. This is fucking cool.
I've been busy over the last 30 seconds trying to come up with a Leonardo DiCaprio and turning it into Leon Rose Capicola.
How did it work out?
As you were talking, I was nodding, and I was like, Leon Rose DiCapicolico?
What? Leon Rosacola Cadapico?
I mean, we would have just saved time and said Leon Rose over at the deli.
Leonardo DiCap. DiCap.
But it's Leon Rose to... Okay. Let me, again, losing the thread. It's a little bouncing off the walls over here a bit.
Okay, so how do you feel, man?
Well, beyond my long-lasting love for Apollo Global Management, which you know about, and I've said many times for years how much I admire their work and trust them. I think out of the available candidates or unavailable candidates, Morey would have been my number one choice. Like, pick someone, anyone, Morey, that'd be the guy. And that's not to say that he's specifically better than a lot of modern GMs who are also very good, but he'd be the one that you take. Like, he's the godfather of this. He's on the bleeding edge. We know where he stands, that he will make decisions that are in the best interest of the team, but also in the interest of forward-thinking philosophy. And that's all you can ask. He has led a Houston organization to the second most wins over the last 10 years, while never having the benefit of drafting superstars. He had to go and get all the ones that they ended up with. He had to trade for James Harden. He had to trade for Chris Paul, signed Dwight Howard. He never had the benefit of two homegrown talents who were under contract for a long time, like Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. So he would have been my choice, and I have full belief that the Sixers will make informed, thoughtful, forward-thinking decisions for the immediate future. And that's all you can ask if you're hiring a GM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm still lost.
It's the Leon Rose Capicola thing, right? I knew I should have kept that under my hat.
The moon is still hitting my eyes, but I think it's interesting how much grief this management group and this ownership group gets. But
so unfair.
So unfair. In the last 10 years, you guys have hired Daryl. They have hired Daryl Morey and Sam Hinkie.
You can say we, because I view myself kind of as a member of the Apollo Global team. I'm an underling in the Apollo umbrella, but yeah, I'm a cog in the machine, sure.
Yeah, I mean, moving forward, I think sports fans should be allowed to say we. That's fine. We get it. We're not actually slamming and jamming, but it's a we as in fan base. But I think I'm just pretty. The stars have aligned for the Sixers. There was some hiccups. There was some carb-on-carb mischief, some carb-on-carb shenanigans. The shamrocks, carbs, and shenanigans.
Right, like when you opened up an egg roll and you're like, this is cake inside?
Is this another egg roll? But and I think, as we've talked before, this roster is close. All you have to do is shine it up a little bit. And right in time, the timing was great. They played the clock right. The 2-minute drill worked out, where it could have fallen into Knicks despair, but it won't now.
So I agree with all of that. And once this contract is actually inked versus just rumored, but it was reported by Woj that it was in, I guess, advanced discussions, that it was almost there. So, I'm going to hold out a shred of disbelief that this may collapse. But overall, I think we can be fairly confident that this will happen based on that reporting. More than anything, it's just a relief. I know you're oozing jealousy and you're like, oh, that's so excitement. It's just relief. When you were a fan of the Sixers under Sam Hinkie and you believed in what he was doing and his core competency, it was a restful time to be a fan, even if the product on the court was shitty. Even if they were losing games, it was restful because you didn't dread the outcome of his decisions. You were content with whatever happened. And that's how I feel about Daryl Morey. Whether they approach this offseason as tinkering with parts and adding some shooters and some ball handlers and kind of rebuilding the undercarriage of the organization that is now so top heavy, I believe he'll do a good job. If he does major upheaval, which we'll talk about in a second, I still believe in his vision. I think he's good at his job. Whether he says, I don't think Joe and Ben can coexist, even though swear they can. If he thinks that and moves forward in a direction like that, okay, I trust him. He's Daryl Morey. He has earned the right for us to be calm and have enough faith in the wisdom of his decisions to not freak out about them. Yeah. So it's like a weight off your shoulders. Yeah. Cool. It's in good hands. There's a caretaker for this franchise where I don't have to actually pay attention. It's a little like when Obama beat George, or, when Obama won the presidency. You're like, oh, it's hands off the wheel a little bit.
I actually feel like relief does not exist in my world ever, especially in my sports world, only because it takes a degree of confidence to experience relief. So I'm never relieved when my team in baseball wins. I'm always just like, oh, yeah, sometimes they win, but they lose a lot too, and I'm really happy or jealous of the other team beating my team. And I think, to me, relief isn't quite the right word, but it's interesting to think, like, the spice of sports life is kind of being a martyr, right? And this, in my opinion, kind of strips Sixers Nation of that feeling because, to your exact points, which you just said, which I agree with, the adult is in the room now. And if things don't work out and, losing is baked into this league, I think it's like the belly aching takes on a different tone. Because in a way, this was a major victory. So it's not a relief. This is like an extremely awesome decision and execution and timing and everything. But the belly aching is going to take on a different tone because he is the master. And if it doesn't work out, it's just a baked-in result. It's not that he made a mistake.
Yeah, because people view me as like a Sixers hater, but that's not true. I defended Sam Hinkie and his maneuvering, with full volume. I only turned against the organization when they got rid of him and brought in people who weren't good at their job. So, like, I will almost certainly defend the things that Morey does in the same way I did with Hinkie because they made sense to me. And I didn't even defend all of Hinkie's moves. I did not like the Michael Carter-Williams deal when they did it. I'm man enough to acknowledge that. I didn't like it. I liked Michael Carter-Williams. He went to Cuse. He was fun to watch. I didn't love the KJ trade. Ultimately, they were good moves. I didn't like those. I never liked the Okafor selection, and that turned out to be a bad one. So I feel like I've always been critical when the maneuvering of GMs that I like still, diverges from my own opinion. So I am, at this point, though, as I said, relieved. I think Morey will make the right decisions, and I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I know why you haven't felt relief, because you've never had this feeling. It really isn't like, hell yes. It's like, well, okay, I can stop being an angry tweeter about the Sixers front office. That's nice. That's nice for me. I can be a positive force in the universe.
Let's remember that you said that. Hold my words against me, and Lindsey Graham over here. But no sin bin. That's why I mentioned baseball, not basketball.
Okay.
I'm a Yankees fan. I've had enough success in my adult life to know that feeling where Brian Cashman is renewed, and I'm like, cool, I don't have to worry about it.
Yes. That's exactly my feeling right now, if this deal does end up consummated as it appears to be. So here's what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about here. A few weeks ago, we talked about the possibility of Morey to Philly. We talked about it on the pod, and we also talked about it beforehand. I can't even recall what was said where. Mm-hmm. You accused me of being a basketball Magellan.
I still accuse you of being a basketball Magellan.
Saying that everything revolves around the Philadelphia 76ers. And maybe it does, Chloe. Maybe the earth does revolve around the sun.
Yeah, the whole NBA rumor cycle revolves around your meat shield takes, which I appreciate. You've gotten 2 victories today. 1 being a meat shield for Josh Harris, and 2 being a basketball Magellan. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Apollo is the common denominator. The sun.
Yeah. Very galactic
as it rises
emergency
and falls.
pod. Yeah.
Across the horizon like a chariot.
Well, we talked about, I accused you for that, but also it made the most sense, right? We talked about how this was the best job in the NBA.
Yeah, look, what's the saying? Even people who are paranoid are right sometime. I forget who said that. Maybe Adolf Hitler or something. I forget exactly.
Luck is the invention of design, right? And
no, this is the paranoia one. You know the paranoia thing? Like even people who are paranoid. Oh, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean people aren't out to get you.
A
Was
broken
that
clock.
Hitler? Was that Hitler?
Was it Mussolini? I can't be bothered with the extra syllable. You know what I mean.
No, I had some gabagool while you were leaving that I off.
But okay, take your victory lap, man. Do your thing.
Well, what I was going to say was this. There is an interesting dynamic here where Morey was leaving the Rockets. And he had made a commitment to see them through apparently the hiring of their next coach. But he may have wanted out of that contract and had to do an amicable split. But there needed to be, perhaps, this is just speculative, plausible distance between him leaving that job and being hired by the Sixers. It may have created ill will if it was obvious publicly that he was leaving the Rockets to go to Philly. So if you were concerned about those kind of optics, Morey then would have been involved in the hiring of, say, Doc Rivers and the hiring of Jameer Nelson, which was something that got my ears up a little bit because I know based on this video of Daryl Morey doing a 2K team a couple years ago, he was raving about how much he loved Jameer Nelson. So when the Sixers hired Jameer Nelson, my antennas went up a little bit. And I was like, that's interesting. They still haven't hired anyone.
Apex Robin, Jameer Nelson.
Great Robin. Dancing Bear. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I noted that. I was like, that's interesting. And then there was the announcement of a guy being hired from Indiana, or it was rumored, or it was said. We saw photos of him. He looked kind of Eddie Munster-ish. But it was never announced. The team never actually said it was going to happen.
So that is not happening.
Unclear. So I guess where I was trying to get with this was that there were a few hints, but there was also subterfuge. So we don't really know whether the Sixers were just being responsive and said, oh shit, Doc Rivers is available. Let's hire him. Oh shit, Daryl Morey's available. Let's hire him. Or this was kind of perceived and set in motion in an established order of events where it just had to look kind of ass backwards, where you hire the GM after the coach. But in reality, it was the other way around. And just as we know, Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey both were members of the Celtics organization at the exact same time. So that's just something to keep in mind. These guys know each other, and they worked together before. They're not strangers, even outside of like the community of NBA players. Like they actually work together for like really good Celtics teams.
Yeah, the temptation is to connect the dots like Ben Affleck in one of the best movies, almost as good as Rounders, but what's as good as Rounders? The Accountant, where you're a take assassin. You just kill those takes, and it's tough for me to figure out because all these GMs are kind of all connected a little bit, like the smart one. You know, the family of people who think like a certain way are all kind of connected. Danny,
yes, La Famille.
Oh yeah, is that short for familia?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just had a slice of provolone while you were wasting time.
Pepperoncini. I just want to leave. Anyway, you throw so many weird. I get so many texts from you being like, "Aha, this is what's going to happen with the Sixers." So I don't know what's gabagool and what's gabagool. You know what I mean?
Gabagool or gabagooled? Gabagold?
Oh God, you blew that one.
From
I allied up that ball, and you could not even oop it, man.
Bad hands.
Sounds like you would go number 1 in this year's draft.
Yeah, well, I guess my takeaway from your accusation there is that I was right, as usual.
I don't want to point out to the listeners, our dear listeners, how many of these texts have been wrong, but we'll leave that for another day when Daryl Morey wins the championship and there's nothing else to laugh about.
Looks to me like all of my theories panned out. First, I said Apollo Global Management all day. I'm a day one. Apollo Global day one, stand up.
Wow. That culture, man.
Apollo Global Management culture, bitch.
Undefeated.
Remains undefeated.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a question here.
Okay.
Daryl Morey, infamous for his eponymous Morey ball, emphasizes three-pointers. Does that approach work with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid? Not to mention the other guys on the roster, but let's address the two big dogs first.
Yeah. I'm
How do
assuming
they work under Morey ball?
assuming they keep Morey smart enough to keep those two big dogs. I think it works. I don't think Sam Hinkie is the tanking GM. I don't think Morey is the three-pointer GM. I think that's what he did with the personnel he had. When he exited Houston, he gave credit to James Harden. He built the team around a certain type of player. So I think GMs like Daryl Morey can work with what he has. Also, if he wants to do the three-point thing, for sure they could do that. Just get, as you always say, a bunch of shoot-first guys that surround these two beasts, right? And you could just chuck up three, like Mike D'Antoni had Quentin Richardson leading the league in threes.
There's a perception that Morey ball is about taking a ton of threes, and that's only partially true.
It's a value.
It's value. So, I saw someone just post up a image of Ben Simmons' shot chart and say, "How is this going to work with Daryl Morey?" And to
Very
me,
well.
I'm like, that's literally Morey ball.
Yeah, it's going to work great.
Morey. Oh, you mean the guy who just dunks and gets layups and foul shots?
Yeah.
So he's James Harden minus the threes, but creates threes like James Harden,
Yeah. Who
just
skips
through other people.
who skips the pass to the pass and just gets to the shot. Yeah, like this is perfect. I think this is the reason Morey took the job, because he's no dummy, right? Like James Harden made his name in Houston, and he looks at these two guys, and he could do a number of things with their skill sets.
Yeah, and like just to go back briefly to what we were alluding to before, the brilliance of Morey ball is that you take 2-point attempts that are bad and replace them with 3-point attempts, which simultaneously spaces the floor. It doesn't mean your foremost goal is not dunks, layups, and foul shots, because it is. Those are the best possessions. Foul shots, dunks, layups. The worst possessions are long twos, which they swap out for threes. That's Morey ball. It's not get off a shit ton of threes. It's swap out long twos for threes.
Like
Your
you always
worst
say.
shot,
Yes.
your worst shot should be a three.
For sure. And I think, yeah, that was my take. The perfect emergency pod. No, but like, I just think to just look at a shot chart is like doing the bare minimum of thinking about what challenges and what kind of options Morey has at his disposal in Philly. I think reducing Ben Simmons in a binary way to someone who can and can't shoot is like a fool's errand.
Yeah, and I think there are some issues with Ben Simmons' lack of spacing. There are some issues with Joel Embiid's shot chart and love of mid-range jumpers, but these are not big deals. It's like what we always talk about. Players don't need to be perfect. They can be really, really, really good and have a few things which they could improve upon. Everyone can't be LeBron James. To say, well, look, Ben Simmons has this flaw. Yeah, he could be a better shooter, just like Steph Curry could block shots. Just like Steph Curry could be a great rebounder. And he isn't, because he's not perfect. And so get other guys to do those tasks. So I think the real question here is, what does Morey do with Tobias Harris? What does he do with Josh Richardson? What does he do with the guys who can't satisfy the requirements for the other dudes? Ben does his thing, Joe does his thing. However imperfect they are, you need to fill in the blanks with guys who can do those tasks. And that's not what Tobias does. That's not what Josh Richardson does. And that's not what a lot of guys on the roster do.
Yeah, Josh Richardson is a noodle that's been boiling for a few minutes too long. He's no longer al
fettuccine.
dente. A fettuccine, pappardelle. I think a rigatone. Reggaeton. That was a terrible delivery of a joke. I was like, hey, reggaeton. But I think one of the more impressive things that Morey had done in Houston was he not only was fun, he managed to trade a lot of players that I thought were kind of a difficult ask. Like, he managed to trade Chris Paul's contract, and Chris Paul is a great player, but he had the balls to take on Westbrook, and I thought that was a great move. Westbrook had a bad week. The bubble's weird, whatever. He moved Clint Capella. He's got balls, man, the cojones, and he can move Tobias Harris for sure. Maybe even to the Knicks. Like, the joke is like closer to being true now than it was yesterday.
Well, one thing I do believe that guys like Morey, guys like Hinkie, generally speaking, were able to make players look good. They were able to narrowly focus their best attributes and have that reflected. And just for an example, Thaddeus Young, when he was on the Sixers, he was viewed as an immovable contract. And Sam Hinkie inflated his numbers. He made sure he took a lot of threes. He's an okay ball player. He's not bad, but they were able to flip him for a first-round draft pick. And that's the kind of thing where you look at Tobias Harris and say, all right, we got to adjust these lineups. But Tobias Harris can put up 20 and 8 and be a solid player. We can get his efficiency up if we use him in a different way. We swap out Josh Richardson and we get a 3-and-D guy there. We space the floor a little bit better. And Tobias Harris looks like a good player. And he's not a bad player, but you use him better. You don't post up Tobias Harris. You use him in lineups that cater more to his skill set, and then he is statistically rewarded for that. So I do think having guys like Horford and Tobias Harris, instead of just saying, let's dump him, move him, get him out of here, you say, under Morey with Doc Rivers, if they are working together and doing this in the way that you would expect they would, these guys will look better.
Just have him drop a triple-dub in MSG and get Mitchell Robinson. I
mean, I'm not in any hurry if I'm Philly to even get rid of those guys. They play better. They have 1 year less on their contract. They're both a whole lot easier to move at the deadline coming up or even the next offseason. I trust Morey. If he's like, fuck it, I'm dumping them all. I'm like, okay, go off, King.
Well, this is even, if we up the stakes a little bit, if Morey in 3 weeks is like, I'm sending Ben Simmons to the Knicks. It's like, well, okay, Morey, you know what you're doing. He's like, this is what I do, kind of. It's Joel Embiid for me. That would be fascinating, right? Because he makes bold moves like this. So if he sends one of these two big dogs to another team, you got to be like, well, there has to be a reason to his rhyme, right? A rhyme to his reason.
Yeah, exactly. And I would be irritated and sad, but I would not believe it was the wrong decision.
Yep.
I would say, oh man, I thought these guys deserved the chance to work on this together with a better fitting surroundings.
Yeah.
But you know more about this than I do. And Morey knows more about this than anybody.
Yep.
That's where I think you have to say, even if decisions don't work out, guys like Morey and Hinkie know what they're doing. And we're following a couple of years behind when we're starting to understand what their ideas are, the metrics they're using, the spatial information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that doesn't mean that these guys are geniuses, but this is
what they do.
Their job. They have stuff at their disposal from organizations that are worth billions of dollars.
I have the blueprint, man. You try to get Rashawn Holmes, maybe sign Jeremy Grant, try to get Robert Covington.
Could they acquire T.J. McConnell?
That would be nice, too, as a ball handler. I mean, J.J. Redick is a unitasker, but he's useful, so you get him.
Not a Hinkie guy, though.
Oh, I mean, forget J.J. Redick.
He's out.
Okay, Tony Roten. Tony Roten, where you at? Yeah.
Elliot Williams is a sleeper pick that you could maybe find, and someone like, I don't know, Dwayne Dedman, perhaps.
KJ McNasty. Let's go.
So yeah, interesting day for Sixers Nation. That was an effective emergency pod.
Efficient. We're just dunks. Just slamming and jamming here, baby.
Just dunks, no threes.
Next time, stay tuned for those threes. Cookie.
Apollo Global Management, bitch.